Welcome out to another episode of It's All Been True Before. This time, the survivors. Yeah, you're the survivors. You saw this episode. We're the survivors. We're still going. Season 3 of TNG, the survivors. Hey, keep us surviving. Patreon.com/IABD, a great way to contribute. Help keep us going. We got a lot more Star Trek to get to. So support us there, get us there, and we will be just like the survivors on It's All Been Trek Before.
Welcome out to another episode of It's All Been Trekked Before. Your regular hosts are here.
This is Steven.
Keith.
Jimmy-Jerome. We are talking the survivors. First impressions.
I got by. I survived. No, sorry. God, that's awful.
I actually like that a lot.
I guess it's one of the first things I would notice is that, I think this is one of the first ones I don't remember ever seeing. Maybe I did, maybe I didn't, but I didn't really recall the puzzle of it. And that's, I think the thing I liked about it was it's a puzzle episode. I don't know. It didn't go quite in the way I would have expected, and that was fine. There are a few holes to pick at, but that's either here nor there. I would say overall it was a decent episode, though. So
my last two notes kind of sum up how I felt about it. I thought the destination was better than the journey, even though it was tell not show. And I think we'll get probably more into that later. But the payoff was still better than I expected because I thought the build and everything was kind of so-so, but it still kept me, to your point, Keith, I was still like, okay, I still want to know what this is.
Yeah.
I wasn't completely out on it, but I wasn't in love with it, but I wasn't out on it. I wanted to find out, and I did like the payoff.
Yep.
I mean, I wavered between mediocre and great as I was watching, but my last notes on here was the Picard Kevin scene at the end was absolutely awesome. The rest of the episode did not live up to that moment.
Yeah, that's a good assessment.
That was, now that you mentioned what it was, there was something about the way Picard decided to resolve things. It was ended up being, this is an investigation. We figured out we figured out what's going on. This isn't our problem. And that was just sort of, it's a good day in the life kind of thing. And it's not everything has to be about them executing justice or saving the universe or something. It's just, this is a big thing that happened. Why did it happen? Here's the answer.
I mean, we're going to talk about justice here, but let's jump back to the beginning of the...
Wait, wasn't that season 1? I mean, if we want to talk about that planet, I'm always here for the planet of beautiful blondes.
Man. Now we have Steven making the TNG references. The way he used to make the TOS references.
I've come a long way, baby.
Yeah, normally you'd only call it back to TOS, which I've got a couple TOS notes here. But yeah, if we jump back to the beginning.
Sure.
The first thing I noted, and this is just a random note, but Crusher's on like a little tiny seat next to Troy on the bridge, so they've made room for her. Don't know what she's not doing in sickbay, but still, it was interesting to me. Like, oh, are those new seats, added seats?
Is the bridge roomier this season than it was in other seasons?
It kind of looks like they may have expanded it a little bit. I know they redo it for the movies, even though they went straight from filming the series to the movies, so they didn't start from scratch. They just vamped it up a bit for the films.
So those are the kinds of things I wish I noticed, but don't usually.
It just, the other night, just watching, I'm like, man, there's a good bit of room. It was one of those where Riker did the thing where he gets up and he's standing in front of the view screen right in front of Picard. It's like, that's not the best spot for you, bud. But then I was like, there's a lot of distance. So there's plenty of room for Picard to look around him and get up and look around him. But yeah. Anyway.
So we get to the planet. There's 11,000 colonists that are missing. And this goes back to a note we frequently bring up, but they like turn on the view screen and they look at one tiny area and they're like, look, the whole planet's barren. And you're like, put your camera to the left of 100 feet and see if it's still barren. And they talk about, the whole planet has been obliterated except for a few acres. So did 11,000 colonists spread out over the entire planet? They didn't just have one little colony?
Yeah, there's a lot of questions unanswered there.
Well, maybe that's why they were so easily defeated. Their numbers were too thinned out, and they couldn't get together soon enough.
I think that's just sloppy writing. Like it goes back to what we talk about all the time, that Star Trek, for the purposes of simplifying the story, doesn't want to talk about like a town or a series of towns. They're just gonna, make the whole planet homogeneous.
And I backed up right there just to be sure. Like, did I miss something? Because I was like, I thought it was they destroyed the planet. Then when they said colony, I was willing to give them a little more leeway, but still.
Yeah. But they said they destroyed the whole planet.
Yeah, and we have these conversations about the sensors and everything every week. I feel like, because their sensors on this one were really precise, and like, well, we know this many, we're picking up these 2 life forms, and we're picking up this thing and this thing and this thing. I was like, those are really good. And then the cameras were really close, and I was like, that's really good. And then I was like, wait a minute, we have that kind of satellite technology now, so I have no doubt their cameras should be that good. But they don't usually use that from week to week, but this week they did. But, because, this is from like the 80s, probably the story that, there are satellites in orbit that can get the license plate off a car in downtown Moscow. I think that's probably true. So it would make sense the Enterprise would have that kind of ability. But so that part I was cool with. But yeah, it's always kind of fudgy on the sensors. And, I know we've talked about, well, we're picking up 2 life forms. Well, are they carbon-based? Yeah, they're carbon-based. Are you sure it's not a badger? What's a badger? It's an Earth animal, that kind of thing. It's just. And I know it serves a story, and I'm just getting in a minutia where I should just get one of those technical Star Trek manuals to figure out how they work. Maybe I should. That could be its own special episode. But
the first couple of times you said sensors, I kept thinking with a C for some reason in my head. Right. But it's like, wait, yeah, okay, no, but still.
I mean, I know we haven't watched the next episode yet, but I seem to remember that the sensors are extremely good in that one, too, to the point where they can pick up, how many individuals are in a room and which one's moving and all of that stuff.
Right. And they also, I think that's the one where they said there's some other, I don't know if it's next, maybe it's this one no, I think it's next week. There was some kind of radiation that is blocking it or whatever. And I was like, okay, you explained it a little bit. But,
yeah, that went a little way toward explaining something that I had a question about in that one too. But
we'll get more into that.
Eventually.
Well, we haven't watched it yet, so our memories are still fuzzy. So fuzzy on that one.
When they do beam down, I wrote nuclear holocaust. They didn't say that, did they?
I don't think so.
Okay. Oh, maybe that was just me trying to speculate what happened.
I mean, there was no nuclear fallout. So.
Yeah, it wouldn't make sense.
I mean, I was much more bothered by that was not O'Brien at the transporter pad again.
Yeah.
And you're beaming down. This is the thing like the original series would do. You're beaming down 5 of your lead characters. I mean, I get Riker. Obviously, he leads the boarding parties. I get Worf because you want security. I get Data because, he notices a lot of things and they always send him. And I get Crusher because we don't know what shape these 2 are in. The planet's been obliterated. Yeah. But then your chief engineer as well. What was the point of Geordi on that away mission?
It's funny you should say that. My first note,
senior officers.
my first note was saying that it probably isn't appropriate for Geordi to be on most away missions, but then I thought it seems like you would want him to be able to scan things the way that he did in this instance.
Yeah,
more often, but it made more of an obvious convenience move too for a plot device to go, hey, there's a trap right there, or. I mean, there are other things I think that he could have observed about. No, that's more of a retrospect thing, though. But knowing the answer that's going to happen, it's interesting if he could have examined the molecular state of what he was able to recreate. This guy, just how well does it hold up to that kind of scrutiny?
Obviously, extremely well, because Geordi didn't notice anything.
Right.
It reminds me that speaking of that ability came in handy. Data memorizing the entire everything about every colonist was just like, here's some exposition for you because I'm Data and I can do it. And so
would have been Spock in the old series.
Yeah, you're right.
I love that he used the word memorized as well, which it doesn't. I mean, how else would you really describe it in
downloaded
human terms? But okay, there you go.
I downloaded the files
for Data's purposes. He could have said something to that effect, but he said memorized.
And isn't that house gigantic for just the 2 of them? As much as colonists in Star Trek are usually presented as simple dwellers and everything, that house is like 3 stories, massive. They're getting older in years. They probably don't want to do all the steps. I suppose they must have an elevator in there. We didn't really see it, but
Yeah, I figured that was kind of to set up the mystery of why do these 2 need why on top of why are these 2 the only ones? Is like why do they have all this room and why
they survived and have fairly lavish conditions, all things considered.
Completely untouched, yeah.
I mean, nobody seems surprised by the condition of the house, which made me think that all the colonists on this planet must have had such houses, but...
My only thought there was, and this is what this is what I did. Yeah, I did what the landing party did. But I suspected like the reason it was that pristine was, they're in with the guys up in, they were in with the Conquerors.
Sure.
So, and I kind of held on to that belief for a while. Then eventually it was like, okay, I don't know what's going on here. And then we found out. But just real quick, speaking of original series, I thought the matte painting for it at the top when they beamed down, as a fan of matte paintings, especially from the original series, I thought that was a really good one.
I thought the scenario was very original series, and maybe because it was cerebral and it was a lot of talk. But the scenario of two people, alone on the planet, immediately I'm thinking Methuselah, which is my alternate episode.
Well, and when he said he couldn't leave, it made me think of Keith's old girl, Merge Hedford, and Corcoran.
Zephram Cochrane.
Zephram Cochrane, Cochrane that couldn't leave the planet, the asteroid in Metamorphosis. So I thought it was going to be kind of that kind of thing. Which I guess the fact that we were all kind of going these different directions and thought it was an allusion to this or that is a supportive thing.
I'm not sure what I thought, but for some reason, I never really bought the idea that they were collaborators. I thought it was going to be something a little bit more mysterious than that, or at least either something that they didn't know themselves, or some little detail that I actually would enjoyed some of the conversations or the investigative questions from Picard along those lines. Like there has to be something like your eye color, your decision not to something.
This seems like a good place to mention who they are. Yeah. Kevin and Rashawn Uxbridge, played by John Anderson and Anne Haney. John Anderson, best known for the movie Psycho, Maverick, 8 Men Out. He's got 245 credits. He did a recurring role in MacGyver. Yeah, just recurring role in Dallas. He's like a pretty well-known actor, and this was near the end of his career. He only had about 10 credits after this.
Yeah.
Only.
Yeah, he was in everything. It took me a long time to scroll through all his IMDb. It's pretty good.
And Anne Haney only has half as many credits, but I remember her so much more because I guess she was older in more of the stuff I would have seen as a kid. But
I
Mrs.
recognized her right away.
Liar, Liar, The American President. I mean, she was such a great character actress.
She didn't really start acting or get her SAG card. Well, she acted like in college or whatever, and then she got married and decided to do what women, I guess people still do, men or women, settle down and do the family thing. And then her husband passed away. She's like, you know what, I'm going to LA. And she got her SAG card at like 45.
Yeah.
And had a ton of credits. As soon as I saw her, I'm like, her I know. He looked kind of familiar.
I guess there's hope for me then, maybe.
I think the same thing every time.
No, I mean, I didn't start until a couple of years ago. Very, very.
Yeah. But you didn't move to
already pretty old. No, like an acting class in college and then nothing.
Yeah.
I don't really want my wife to have to die for any of that. But
did any of you guys think? Okay, his name's Kevin. Especially given where the episode ends up, you're like, you went with Kevin.
Kevin Uxbridge, but Uxbridge.
Uxbridge, that's true. That's a good one.
It's funny. I thought about that. You should have more names like that. I mean, that would be like your Ethel or your Herbert or something from our now kids would. Yeah.
Your name's Kevin. Well, my great grandfather was a Kevin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I liked both of the actors. I mean, I think they did well with who they picked for guest stars this time around.
Yeah, I thought it was tough with him early on, and I don't mean the actor, but the character, because it just felt like get off my lawn.
Yeah.
Like, okay, it was really one note. It did build the suspense, again, that mystery of why is she like, let's not overreact, and he was just like, get out, leave.
That's something I was going to bring up too. If she were was she such a perfect recreation of this woman that he couldn't control her or anything? Not control. You know what I'm saying? He didn't have any bearing on how she was going to behave in these situations.
No. Here's the thing, Keith, and this is, she was not a perfect recreation because the real Rashawn took up arms and went and helped defend the colony, and this Rashawn wouldn't leave him and tried to stay with him and said, I didn't go fight. I had to stay with him. So it was clearly an idealized version of what he wanted her to be rather than an authentic recreation of her.
That's a very good point. But she still gave away some of the things in the sense that it was a hint that she said that she would have done it. she actually had wanted to do it. And there's some, I don't know what kind of memories he would have given her. And but I guess my point is the way that was she on his behalf trying to diffuse some of the suspicion away from him by inviting people in, or was it just an oversight, something he couldn't deal, he hadn't foreseen?
My guess is he didn't change too much of her personality. He'd want her to be as close as possible. And so this was more just adjusted so that she was more devoted to him, if anything.
Yeah,
was my assumption.
And I guess, if I'm just thinking of my own life, if I had to recreate a Colleen, I wouldn't want her to change and believe or think everything I said was right.
Well, yeah.
That would be terrible for me as well as for everybody else. So maybe
but you might make a couple tweaks to make her a little more.
That's for sure. She would become a bigger Eagles fan and a bigger Star Trek fan.
Right. Yeah, little things like that, certainly.
And some of my jokes she would like more, but yeah.
I don't think I would. No, I don't think that would change the way that Marianne reacts to my jokes. Unfortunately, maybe it's masochism or something. But
neither would we.
Sometimes that's the point of it, though, is to get that kind of.
It is. That's.
Oh man! So they beam down. They meet the couple. Riker talking while hanging upside down was great. I love that they left him upside down for a bit, just so we could have that. And
he was still puffing his chest out and everything and that's right. That's what he do.
And Worf had a couple great moments. The first one, right after they went in the house, complimenting Kevin on his gall. How he admires gall.
I love that. My dad, and I still use this quite often. I'll have to clean it up a little bit. When my dad really thought someone was just an a-hole, he would say, "It takes a lot of GD gall." ... and then the rest of it, and I still get into that when I'm ranting somewhere. I'm like, oh, you got to have a lot of gall to so I love that whole conversation, the use of the term gall. I loved it, and I felt like I knew he was going to say I admire it, but I didn't care. It was great. I loved it.
Then we had the music box, which started affecting Troy immediately, which, of course, for the viewer, because you have the comparison, the music back and forth, you're going to know something's up. Although it was never really clear in the context of the story why she was hearing the music.
Right.
But what more concerned me in this early stage was, why was she pretending everything was fine?
I could never decide that. I mean, everybody does a little bit of like, what, I'm good to an extent.
I mean, she made the comment like, oh, you'll just think I'm silly, but seriously, when it's really bugging you and, you're in space and you encounter weird things, I would think you'd go and tell somebody.
Yeah, especially since they're trying to solve something that can't, is being very difficult to explain. It seems like a pretty huge clue.
If it was a minor irritant, sure, but the way it was displayed, it was not a minor irritant. It was. Well,
she said it ramped up too, though. I think she probably mistook it for some kind of natural phenomenon. But I'm trying to. I think my note about that was I was wondering, just the way it was presented, why she didn't associate it with a music box of some sort. And even when she didn't think it was, when she thought it was just a minor irritant, I would have, in her position, I would have tried to describe the song to someone to see, do you know what this is? Mm-hmm. Is how much the data or the ship or something, and say, what is this? Where did it come from? But
I thought it was a terrible song worm to have in your head. I don't know if you guys have candidates for what would be the worst. I went with "We Built This City" by Starship. That was the first one that came into my mind. That I would not want that in my head, my brain, my head, especially not at that decibel level.
I mean, there's so many
I know.
options to choose from. Row your boat, being a no, I'm kidding.
Get around, yeah.
That actually seems like one that you would, one without a beginning or an end would be the most.
The song that never ends.
Yeah, just in your head or maddening.
We get back to the bridge and the enemy ship comes out, and Worf had insisted that the ship wasn't still in the system, and I liked very quick the Worf looking embarrassed when they see the ship in the background. What bothered me a little bit is then Picard went back and had a conversation with him about it. I guess that they were trying to give Worf a little character development, but I liked him just looking embarrassed. I didn't think we needed to follow up on that.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Yeah.
there was the hallway conversation before,
Right.
where he staked his reputation. Well, I guess Jimmy didn't want to hear it. No, I'm kidding.
I needed some light.
Yeah, she said he would stake his reputation, and I think that deserves some follow up. I mean,
I don't think so. I mean, maybe eventually down the road, but in that bridge scene at the moment, I didn't want to see it. I wanted to just see his embarrassed look and like maybe at the end of the episode we'll get a tag where they address it. But
I thought the second they had that hallway conversation, I'm like, Worf's gonna screw up, and I wrote down, "Way to go, Worf." Was my comment once that spaceship showed up.
I put poor Worf's reputation. Also about that, actually, my second note was about that conversation, and I said that surely Jimmy will explain if the Andorian reference was actually an allusion to some canon events that happened before that. Picard was describing some sort of encounter with the Andorians, where they disassembled their ship and hid it from view long enough to reassemble it and surprise someone. I don't know if that referred to anything.
I don't recall anything in the canon about that. The only Andorians we've seen up to this point are Journey to Babel in the original series. However, they do play a fairly large role in at least one season of Enterprise, so maybe we'll get the retcon then. I don't know. We'll see.
There was one in the other episode, but it didn't play into it. The one with the insane asylum. Another one of the ones in the insane asylum.
Oh yeah, in the original series. You're right.
But he was just there, but. Yeah.
You're right. There was an Andorian in that episode.
I say he, but it's Andorian, so...
I want more Andorians, is what I'm saying. I mean, in the Deep Space Nine novel set after the series, there's an Andorian lead character that joins the station, and apparently they have 4 genders, and their romantic relationships are extremely complicated, and I'd really like to see that explored on screen further.
More than 2 genders? That's ridiculous.
Well, not only is it 4 genders, but they have relationships with a member of each gender at once. So there's 4 people involved in the relationship, and it gets very complicated.
I've been in those kinds of relationships, let me tell you.
Unbeknownst to the other 3.
Unfortunately.
I had a little more in the music box note. What was it? Mm-hmm. One of my possible explanations was from the production standpoint. Maybe they didn't have her hum it because they
couldn't get clearance,
something like that, or they hadn't even decided what the tune was going to be yet. She wasn't even hearing anything like the actress, so they just had to add like the music in post. So maybe she was just like,
true too. Yeah,
could very well be. You're spoiling the magic of television, Keith. But
it was Whom Gods Destroyed. That's the other episode.
Yes. So the enemy ship, when they're first facing them, it turns and it runs, and Data immediately says it's left the system. To leave the solar system, I mean, you got to take a little bit of time to speed up, right? Not half a second. Yeah. It seemed unless they went to warp right then.
Mm-hmm.
But I did like Geordi say he could get him to warp 9.37 in 15 seconds, like he's on some Fast and the Furious movie.
I noted that too. I was like, that's very precise and very
Scotty would have said that.
Yeah, that's a commercial. Yeah.
Scotty will say it'll take me 60 seconds, but I'll do it in 15 because I know you don't have the time.
Well, I mean,
you got 7 or you're fired.
The fact that they were able to do that ended up being a clue, I think. I mean, since we saw the ship matching their speed, so it was just some sort of magical effect that they suddenly just left the system. They were just gone. So maybe he just assumed that they had somehow sped away rather than vanished.
As an effect,
I don't know. I feel like there weren't enough clues there for Picard to figure it out.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a different aspect of what I was talking about just then, but I mean, I don't know. I hadn't really thought about it. How far did he have to jump? I'm trying to think this through.
I feel like it was a big jump. I feel like maybe if we'd had a conference room scene where they all talked it out, they could have gotten there. But the way they did it, of Picard just supernaturally figuring it out and then not telling or discussing with anybody, that felt so Kirk and not at all Picard.
From a storytelling aspect, from as far as like, we're not going to reveal how he knows and all this stuff, and he's figuring this stuff out and making us still think about it more. I liked it, but I'm with you, Jimmy. It was kind of like, okay, what is he just making this? Is he just guessing?
No, and they need to give the viewers some explanation at some point. Like, this one thing clued me in and whatever.
I feel like Riker or somebody even said, like, what are you going on? Just trust me or whatever. Something. I'm paraphrasing, but I think from that aspect, I'm with you on that. again, I appreciate it. I like that Picard figured it out, and I thought it was cool.
I'm just trying to remember. Like, I can't remember. It felt like he was still reaching even when he was getting the explanation, or pinning him down. Though I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, about halfway through the episode, he's like, "Oh yeah, I think I got this figured out. I'm just going to test it and see if I'm right."
Oh, right.
Basically,
yeah. It's like, or we're going to get blown up. It's like, it's quite a.
I guess at the time I took that to mean that he had a troubleshooting step he knew that would draw out whatever the explanation had to be, rather than him knowing exactly what it was going to be.
Right.
But that's still, that does seem like a leap when you put it that way.
Yeah, I don't know if it ruins the episode really that much if he and whoever have a short conversation where they're like, he's like, well, I think this is going on. Well, I don't know if I agree with you or whatever. I don't know. Maybe there's, like you said, Jimmy, maybe there is a short conversation. I don't know. But I wasn't super mad about it, but I was thinking the same thing. Like, he's really
got out of character.
We don't even know what he's going on. So it is a little bit like, all right, this is quite the guess.
He did say something about, like, well, this thing made me think. I just can't remember the exact. All right.
I mean, Picard is a fan of detective novels and stuff, but it still felt,
Yeah.
Worf drinks tea with his pinky out, which was fun. And right after that, he delivered the best line in the episode: "Good tea, nice house." I liked the concept of, and this was even before we found out what Kevin was, but Kevin being a man of special conscience, where he does not fight, he does not kill. I liked that concept.
I agree, and it felt like something that would have been in the '60s show, the original series. Yeah, and I wrote down, is this a conscientious objector angle? And I thought it was a great angle. And when we get to the reveal, I think it's still a significant one because he kind of still was.
I mean, I'm telling you, this is an original series script. I think they didn't use. It really just readapted.
The more you say it, the more I agree with you. Yeah, it was very.
I mean, I don't think it actually is.
No.
This was written by, or talking the script. This was written by Michael Wagner, who wrote 3 episodes of The Next Gen. The first one being Evolution, which you may remember was the episode, the season premiere, where Wesley's science project escaped with the nanites. So he's going for some high concept sci-fi. His 3rd episode is also this year. It's called Booby Trap, and it's coming up actually, I think it's 2 weeks from now, where the Enterprise triggers an effective trap left by an extinct race with a perfectly preserved derelict ship serving as cheese for Picard. So I think this writer definitely has a style of what he goes with in the way he writes Star Trek. But again, he only wrote those 3 episodes, all in the early season 3. 3 of the first 6 episodes of the season.
Oddly enough, Khalid asked me last week, what's a booby trap? So
it's called a bra.
I was going to say it's the alternate episode title for Justice.
That's Booty Trap, Keith.
Yeah.
This was directed by our good friend Les Landau, who directs a bazillion episodes. So I don't think we need to go into all his credits again. Sure. We've done it so often. So Picard beams down to the Uxbridge house, and he just walks right in. And I'm like, why didn't you knock? This isn't the Enterprise. You don't just walk in rooms without.
He wanted to catch them.
He decided it was all an illusion anyway. He's going in either way.
It could be that too.
Also, every time we saw the warship, it was the same shot. They were really skimping the budget in this episode.
The first second I saw that warship, I'm like, that's kind of cool. And the more I looked at it, there was that sameness of it. There was it looks kind of drawn, and it's doing the parallel, we can't go low or above you kind of a thing. So,
there's something I noted too, and I wondered if it was one of those budget things after the fact, if it was originally in the script to describe what should happen. But when Riker pointed out that the ship was 5 times bigger than the Enterprise, I thought, well, that helped me too to understand what they were reacting to, because it didn't really seem to come across in the picture to me.
I agree.
It wasn't like, oh wow, that does look massive. It was, even when they had them in the same shot, they didn't really set their perspective in the correct way to impart that. So
it looked just a little bigger than the Enterprise, yeah.
Because actually, now that you mention it, because it ends up being an illusion, which to me, now it's making me think, when you say if a ship should be massive and the Enterprise should be small, it makes me think of Corbomite maneuver, where you've got this giant ship that ends up just being kind of a facade. Yeah, and if TOS can afford it, TNG should be able to afford it. But yeah, we're quibbling now, but still.
Yep.
That's what we do on the show.
we get to Kevin's confession scene, or at least that's where I am on my notes, where he admits he destroyed not just the attackers in the ship, but committed genocide and destroyed an entire race of 50 billion out of anger and reaction. Yeah. And God, I've got so many thoughts on this scene. I mean, first of all, a species only have 50 billion. I mean, we've got, I don't know, and they're spread out across the galaxy. It seemed like kind of low number to me. Maybe I'm wrong.
Oh, you mean okay? I'm thinking like right now. I'm pretty sure we have less than 50.
We do, but it's still.
With Keith. I get you now, though.
I don't know. I mean, we're gonna have 10 billion soon just on Earth alone. But
so
that doesn't seem unreasonable. I mean, over a couple planets. I mean,
I do wonder if he had such a strong non-violent conscience and an "I don't kill" attitude before he committed genocide, or if that has been a part of his personality he's folded in after he committed genocide.
That occurred to me when you said that earlier too. Actually, I don't know.
Well, he says the line about if I'm gonna be with this Earth woman or whatever, I need to hide it from her and kind of change what I do. So I think maybe that became part of it. And as everyone, you guys know, and everyone listening to this podcast knows, I hate the godlike beings or do that. So I kind of like the idea of him being like, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. And I even like the idea of him getting mad, even though he killed 50 billion people, but it sounded like they had it coming.
Hey, not all 50 billion had it coming. You don't know with that one ship versus the rest of the species.
That's true.
But, the group punishment is something I've always objected to. And genocide is never okay, but I got the impression that he's a being that keeps himself in check because he knows what he can do. And then that moment of weakness showed what he can do. And it bothered him more than anybody.
Right, yeah, and there is remorse there, which I think a lot of our other gods we've dealt with, there isn't. And so much, so I appreciated that. There's also an element of, this is Star Wars copied Star Trek here, which still works here, because...
You're probably going to say what I was about to say.
I know you're with me, Keith. I killed them all, the women and children, too.
Yes. I was about to say that there was an aspect of that, too. To the question of whether or not he was a pacifist before that, or to what degree, my thought was it sounded sort of like he had at least that basic principle leading into that, but he just snapped because of the trauma of what happened there, and just had to that was his tearful confession to Picard. I killed them all, not just Padme would have been into it if she understood, or if she were there.
And I kind of get why Picard would just let him go. I mean, it's not like they could build a jail that would hold him anyway, even though I think he would surrender himself to a jail. I really do, the way he presented. But Picard has that line, there's no law to fit his crime, fit your crime. And I'm like, wait. There's no law against murder on the books times 50 million? I think there's probably a law that fits your crime.
I think that there's a few exceptions in play there. One, it might have been self-defense up to a point where it might have been an accidental overreach on his part. We don't know if he said, I need to kill each and every one of these. It could have been like a slip of the tongue, so to speak, and with with his mental abilities. The other thing is, I don't know if have either of you watched The Boys yet?
No.
Well, all I'll say is that there's a character in it who is essentially as powerful as Superman, seemingly more so in certain ways, and is unhinged to the point where you think people they need to tiptoe around him to keep him from just. So I mean, even if Picard thought to himself, you know what, we need to take him to justice, I would think that he would want to try to avoid antagonizing him, even though he didn't seem to be showing any sort of fear in that way. But I mean, even if he decided that he needed to be punished, what could he possibly do to restrain him, or what wouldn't put the ship at unnecessary risk?
I think there's nothing we can do that's going to punish you more than you're being punished, I guess.
Yeah.
And I'm watching Conscience of the King right now in the original series. That's where I am in my rewatch of my rewatch. And it's a similar thing where Codus is kind of like, go ahead, shoot me, whatever, he stopped killing. He still feels it about it, and obviously he's not a godlike being. But I also think he's spending all his energy keeping those powers from getting loose. So I think it makes sense. It would make sense that if he slipped for a second, it would be pretty devastating. If we're to believe him and the powers he has, and obviously we do because he killed 50 billion people.
He did it.
We don't know that for sure.
Well, we think he did. Yeah, he thinks he did. Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing about the punishment or him punishing himself, I mean, he literally is in the sense that he's confined himself to that planet, and it with a constant reminder of what he lost. Even if they could take him to a jail, what would be the point of doing that if he really is committed to staying in that one place isolated? It's the same effect.
We get to see Starfleet jails in Star Trek Voyager, and they're at least as nice as that house. So. Their prisons in the Federation aren't exactly what we're used to prison being today.
Yeah.
I do want to know how they'll assure that he's left alone. Are they going to put a general order like Talos where he can't get to the planet? But would Starfleet even agree to that? Like, if Picard tells them the truth, I don't understand how Picard could tell them the truth when we've seen enough corrupt admirals that are going to be like, no, you can't just leave him there unless they're scared of him. I don't know. It just felt a little weak there.
Yeah, what did he put in his log for it?
The whole planet was destroyed. Nothing there. Please stay away. There's radiation. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, from a dramatic point, I love that whole idea of there's nothing I can do. You're in this universe of your own making or whatever. But yeah, from a logistical, legalistic point of view, it's like, well, something should happen. Yeah, he is suffering, but ask whatever the people he killed.
Fashion.
All my fashion was right off the bat.
Yeah.
Crusher's hair improves every episode, so whatever Gates McFadden was doing, she's making her way back to her beautiful coif. And I appreciated Troy's Teal number. I don't think we'd seen that yet.
I feel like Troy's getting a different outfit every episode this season. Yeah. Nobody else gets new outfit. I mean, they all got the one basic new outfit.
Right.
The rest of the costume budget goes to Troy.
And I'm a fan. I generally don't love Teal, but she looks great in it, and it looked great, and it's a shame she was debilitated for the rest of the episode.
I feel like that's at least they're using her more this season. Like her abilities played into something here that, she was going to find me outside to distract her. And again, I don't think he realized how much he was hurting her. But so his powers were definitely limited to a certain extent. And then the colonists, of course, had clothes, which I thought were consistent with colonist clothes we'd seen before with colonist clothes in the original series.
And I was thinking the usual thing, like they wear the same thing every day, but she would in his mind. And what use does he have for clothes? He's a god.
And the formal dress Worf wore to T was on point.
Yeah. Yes. I only have two other little notes. One is just Picard saying everything's right on schedule.
Sabotage.
Oh, he did say sabotage. Wait, was it in this episode or the next one?
He doesn't say it like Kirk. Every captain's got an S word they do funny.
Yeah, can you say sabotage? I don't say sabotage. I say sabotage. My other one is Riker at the beginning, and he leads us all kind of down this path of, he's like, it doesn't make sense that just the two of you would be left. So I wrote down, Riker rejects the randomness of the universe, which on the one hand serves him well here in a way, I guess, but with all his travels, he should realize there is a randomness to the universe. So I just thought that was an interesting philosophical thing he threw out right off the bat, even though in this sense it was more of an NCIS procedural kind of thing. Yeah. That this doesn't add up. Some things don't add up in the universe. That's why Merch Hedford spent the rest of her life with Zephram Cochrane on an asteroid. So,
do you have an alternate episode?
I do. I really enjoyed the destination when Mr. Kevin reveals all the whole story. Here's the whole journey I've been on, his journey. I want to see that journey. That's what I wanted to see or at least even if it's just one facet of it, like, again, like you said early on, Jimmy, it's kind of a Methuselah thing. And, when he says, as soon as he said, I wanted to marry this woman, or I fell in love with this woman, it's a Methuselah thing. It's a Superman thing too. I'm with this person there's no way she's not an immortal like me. So at some point I'm going to have to deal with that poorly. So he had an entire race. All they had to do was let her die naturally, and they could have saved themselves. But, there is again, I guess, sorry, I'm getting off track on just our old episode, but there is a weirdness to him being, and I think maybe he even alludes to this of, I was okay with 10,998 people dying, but not that 10,999 because she was that important to me, which is kind of what I was talking about before. But I guess if you're a god, does that equation? No, I guess it doesn't.
I mean, why didn't he just remake the whole colony?
Right.
He probably didn't want to.
All the other colonists cost his wife her life because they convinced her to go fight for freedom or whatever.
That's another good point.
I mean, if he destroys some of their ships along the way, doesn't he save billions of people?
That's the age-old argument. Is it worth it to kill somebody to save others?
The time machine, go kill Hitler thing. I know we haven't watched this, but I had a Prime Directive conversation with somebody that we kind of talked about this as well, the same kind of thing of like, well, maybe you should have taken action. And I'll get more into this next week. This is a premonition. And their response, well, what if you screwed it up? So, and maybe that was his thought too, is like, oh, I'll just destroy the one ship. Oh, but what if I screw up and blow up a bunch of them? So
I can't wait to listen to the Greatest Generation episode on this, that other podcast, because their company that they release podcast under now is Uxbridges Shimoda. And we got Shimoda in season 1. He was the engineer that played with all the chips and the naked nail. But they named their company after Uxbridge. So I'm very curious to hear I get Shimoda made an impact on him. I'm curious to hear how Uxbridge did. I also thought Keith would call out that the planet was Rana 4 when in Universe Journey we've talked about Starbase Rana so often. But I will say that I did not name that starbase after this planet. I did not know there was a planet called Rana 4. I had forgotten. Rana is actually a Latin name or something name for a frog, and I was trying to make the Seth Meyers joke of every time he brings up the tree frog, the story's going to be interrupted. They never actually get to Starbase Rana.
Huh.
It was a Seth Meyers reference, not a Survivor's reference.
That would explain why the name sounded so familiar to me. I didn't quite catch it, but I was like something.
A scale of 1 to 10, how annoying was Wesley?
I gave him a 1.
He was at the helm, and he just.
Oh, that's right.
He was just an ordinary helmsman for the purpose of the episode, and he was fine.
Yeah, I still gave him a 1. He was fine.
1.
Yeah, that's the lowest score. So it's 1 across the board. Yeah. Who was your annoyance?
I still stuck with Kevin, even though I loved his story at the end. His acting like I'm an old man or get off my lawn annoyed me. So,
Keith?
Kevin, for the exact same reason. When we were talking about that earlier in the episode, I thought about there's an episode of Angel where they did that for the mystery of what was going on. It's the one where the boy was possessed by a demon, and they first get to the family, and the father is that figure of like, there are strangers here. Shut up! Don't tell them anything. And the wife was the same figure of, we need to be inviting. We need to be we need to be grateful to them for trying to help, etc.
Sure.
So it felt a little bit too much like that trope of that kind of that dynamic. Even though in both cases there was a nice departure from that eventually in the episode. But
I'm going with Picard because of all the reasons we discussed earlier. Anybody want Rashawn as their crush of Star Trek, or Kevin?
I doubt it. Who's my current crush?
Ardrian, or from the previous episode?
Oh yeah. No, I'm not changing.
Okay. Ranking the episode, where do we want to put this? I mean, I will say I think it's better than this writer's first episode, Evolution. The other episode, which is currently number 1 of 2, is The Ensigns of Command. Is this our best episode or our second best episode?
I'm going to like this one more just because I'm going to give it up to Kevin for his story at the end. Again, usually you don't care for a tell over a show, but
yeah, I think I'm with Steven. I want to put it number 1 of the 3. Not that there's a lot to go on, but
yeah.
Keith?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter if I agree or not, but I mean,
sure it does.
No, I'm kidding. My misgiving, or my first misgiving would be, there wasn't as much going on in this as these other flashier ones with all the, it seemed like the bigger production of nanites, the bigger production of all the people on the surface arguing with Data and so forth. I can see it being first mainly because of the payoff. It was a tidy episode. It wasn't like it was devoid of holes as we saw, but it was streamlined to the puzzle, and that was fine.
It didn't blow me away head and shoulders, but I think we talk a lot about those sci-fi concepts, and I just thought the different way. As much as I'm down on the God people, the different way it dealt with that. And again, Methuselah thing, even again, is kind of a thing that we've done before, but maybe I'm showing my TOS bias too. But those kind of just ended up pushing it ahead for me.
Yeah, I really like the concept of Kevin's character, Uxbridge, and I like the name Uxbridge. So yeah, I enjoyed this episode. It frustrated me a little bit that it wasn't as solid as it could have been, but other than that, next week we're going to be talking Who Watches the Watchers with no question mark at the end of the title. I'm very curious why there's no question mark. The Enterprise is to provide technical assistance to a 3-man anthropological field team on the planet Mintaka 3, which is observing and hiding the Vulcanoid Bronze Age native population. But when the holographic hiding place is ravaged by an explosion, the landing party and its advanced technology are observed by 2 natives. Ooh. And then they end up believing Picard's a god. So,
a lot of Prime Directive talk coming up.
Oh, so much Prime Directive talk. If you're a Prime Directive fan, you're going to want to tune into that next episode. If you're not, you may just want to skip it. Until then, live long
and prosper.
And don't tick me off or I will kill all of our listeners with a thought.
And the women and children, too.
It's All Been Done presents
Who's Got the Time?